All right, let's go ahead and get started. So today is introduction for interior design for sensory-friendly homes. So as I said, we are getting into the intro of kind of the entire scope of things. And so it's definitely going to hit a lot of topics. And I have several other workshops that will do deep dives. So that can be something to watch out for if you're interested in pursuing this further. Okay, so we will get started. The things we're going to talk about, and this is a presentation that each of you are going to receive in your inbox. So the cool thing about that is once you receive that PDF, you will be able to click on each of these underlined sections and their hyperlinks. They'll take you right to that section in the presentation. We're going to cover all these topics today, a brief pop-in, but just to tell you a little about me. So this topic is really personal for me because I've seen how inclusive design can soothe and regulate my own neurodiverse family, also known as my neurofestive family. We have got a lot of things going on. We've got ADHD, dyslexia, auditory processing disorder, and then something that was really impactful for our family was if you've heard PANDAS, it's pediatric autoimmune neuropsychiatric disorder associated with strep. Mouthful, I know, but my son was diagnosed with that autoimmune condition in high school, and it really explained a lot of the things that we had dealt with and how sensitive his nervous system had been for a long time. So I've really seen how these things can impact on a positive way, in a positive way, all of us. And I'm just grateful that, 20 plus years ago, I decided to go into interior design because I was able to leverage some of that for these sensitivities. And as we're going to see, this is really becoming something that, especially in the US, it really has been on track in Canada and Europe for years. The understanding that our environments really do impact how we feel on a day-to-day basis. Let's see, let me admit. Perfect. I studied neuroinclusive, or I'm a neuroinclusive interior designer, but I've studied specifically for that through the I am blanking, the Institute for Chronic Disorganization. And for those of you who are just joining, I'm running my own tech today. So between running it and not losing my train of thought, just bear with me. I have done some studies outside of the typical interior design track. And I have just really enjoyed learning and kind of the validation of my firsthand experience through that. So what is neuroinclusive design? Why is it important? So as we know, the neurodiversity, it's an umbrella term that describes various conditions. And those conditions cause people to process information differently than their neurotypical peers. So those conditions, broadly typically include autism, learning disabilities, anxiety, ADHD, sensory processing disorder, these kinds of things. And in this workshop, we're going to explore some of the most well-studied and impactful tools for this sensory challenge community. But you need to think of this as kind of a beginner's toolkit. You're going to leave with new strategies, but not all of them are going to work for you. And even ones that do, they may not work sometimes. And so you have to dig around in your toolbox and try something else. So just keeping in mind that what works well at one time just may not later on, but you've got this toolbox now and you'll be able to move forward in a really helpful way. So let's get started with the first section, color and visual stimulation. So this is one of my favorite resources that I've found is GA Architects out of London. So they're a firm that specializes in built environments for the autistic community specifically. And they have a lot of research and client interaction data. In fact, I have linked, if you want to get really nerdy, once you get this presentation, I have lots of links on the bottom to various studies, but also GA Architects' full presentation is also linked here. And one thing that they've discovered is time after time, muted single colors really speak to their client base broadly. And so the chart that you see with the little squares, that those are some colors that they have found really resonate and they'll tend to use. So when I'm talking through this section about saturated versus muted colors, what I'm talking about is you'll see the little, looks like a little flower of bright colors. Those are highly saturated versions of those colors. And then what I did is I took that little array and I deepened those by adding gray to them and made them muted. So both of those little flowers, those are the same colors. Just one is more saturated, more vibrant, and the other one has been muted or toned down. In my design guide for neurodiverse homes, I can get a lot more deep into some of these topics. And one example that I gave, just to kind of help you keep it in mind, is, when we were kids and we were playing with watercolors, and that the watercolor water would just turn that like real muddy color. I mean, that's what you're doing. You're taking real saturated, beautiful dyes. But then when you kind of add and mix darker tones to them, in whatever undertone, you end up getting kind of them muddied down. So professional painters and whatnot are able to make it attractive, much more attractive than we made our childhood watercolor water, for sure. So research shows that color choices do have a profound effect on sensory processing. For instance, muted blues, greens, earthy browns, slate, and coal, so those colors of nature, really have been shown to reduce overstimulation in both autism and ADHD. In high contrast, while it can be pleasantly activating for some people, lower contrast can help reduce anxiety in others. So you see, as far as the colors go, those top kitchens in pictures 1 through 3, those are rooms where you either have either a muted or low contrast version of natural color tones that can just be very, very enjoyable. And then the kitchens on the bottom. So number 4 is a higher contrast kitchen. So some people may find that too busy. Definitely for those who tend toward overstimulation, that's usually the case. And that goes for open shelving too in the kitchen. So anytime you just have a lot going on, that kind of overstimulation can start to happen. Now, kitchens 5 and 6, those are lower contrast kitchens, but I just put both of those in there to show you that contrast doesn't have to be light or dark. It can be either or. We'll see in a minute that I can go even into midtones, but it's really just about the way that the colors from one to the other transition. So if you just don't have a really high transition contrast, then that would be considered a low contrast space, which some people really enjoy. So here's some examples. So we've got low contrast light on the left-hand side, low contrast medium, and then kind of what a dark version of low contrast would look like. By comparison, we have a high contrast over here on the left side, but in primarily lighter tones. And then you see this high contrast mid tone, also with just some brightness and some punchy colors, which are just really yummy. Looks like candy. And then you also see the darker version of a higher contrast room, where you just have, when we're talking about contrast, also, let me point out, it's not just color always, but if you look at the brick on the fireplace, you look at the acrylic on the coffee table, you look at the bamboo mesh on the fireplace screen, that really nubby ottoman in the foreground on the right side. So all of those are contrasting textures also. So texture plays as much a role in contrast sometimes as color, which again, I mean, makes sense. It's visually stimulating, texturally, just like color is. And as we're kind of coming to the midpoint of this section, we just kind of recap what sensory-friendly color looks like. We're going to bring nature in. We're going to, for more calming spaces like bedrooms, we're going to move toward like, whether it's a dark or a light color, we're going to want to keep that saturation really muted and the pattern's pretty simple, just because you don't want a lot of activation in the bedroom. So when we move more toward the activating colors and pattern side, though, we can, use that contrast and pattern in ways that you really enjoy. So for some people, they're really going to enjoy it when those colors stand out a bit, especially in places intended for activity, whether it's like the living room you spend a lot of time in, an office where you kind of want to stay a little bit more focused. But yeah, that's kind of on both sides of the spectrum what sensory-friendly color and contrast can look like. Okay, so this is something, we're going to walk through this part real fast. This is a couple of the steps from my Finding Your Project Style and Color Palette Guide that's available for free on my website. You can download it. I think it's about 12 pages. And what it does is it's going to walk you through the process of finding what is your preferred color palette. And part of that does start with your preferred style combination. And I'm of the mindset that very few of us are truly one particular design style. I think that a lot of styles kind of get brought into our preferences. And the design quiz that I have on my website too, I created that really trying to make sure I brought as much of that in as possible, because I hadn't found that anywhere. And it always frustrated me because I felt like when I took style quizzes, I felt very pigeonholed or it was just wrong. So I created my style quiz to help you get a sense for, and you get a ranking at the end, of like what of, 10 common design styles you really tend toward. All right, all that to say, what you'll do, and this is what I have clients do, is you're going to go to Pinterest or House or your favorite place you're going to go to your favorite place and to organize pictures, and you just go ahead and fill up your board. Like, fill it up. A lot of times when I put too much information in something, it all of a sudden muddies down how helpful it is, and then I get overwhelmed by it. That's not the case here. You really want a lot of information, because what you're going to be doing is, once you have a large data set, let's call it, you're going to view it at full screen. So kind of like we have here. And you're going to just kind of look at that big picture. And we're going for color here. When you go and look at style, the instructions will be a little bit different. Let's see if I click this button, will it work? Yes, okay. So once you do that, you are going to identify, and if anyone's heard of the 60-30-10, you're a little bit ahead of the curve on this. I hadn't heard about that until the last few years, but it really makes a lot of sense. It's essentially the rule of thirds, that a room that is well balanced is typically divided up into 60-30-10, and that can go for texture, it can go for color, it can go for just general the amount of items on a wall. But what we're looking at here is the 60% is going to be your foundational color. So typically that's the wall, ceiling, and floor. So those big swaths of space are usually going to be at least part of your foundation color or colors. And then 30 is going to be a secondary color or set of tones. And it's going to be different than your 60. It's going to be supportive, but it's going to show up quite a bit. And then that 10%, that's usually your accent colors. It's what shows up in smaller amounts. And if you are going for a more monochrome room, that 10% can show up more so in texture, which is kind of something interesting to think about depending on your preference for decorating. Okay, so once you see that big data set of your pictures, you've kind of identified, because of that, you're like, okay, what is the most color I'm seeing? What is the second color I'm seeing? What tends to be accent colors here? You can kind of understand where you lean. And then this is the hard part. You then have to go through and kind of start narrowing down, like, okay, for this project, what do I want to commit to? And you find a handful of photos at that point. And then you really analyze those specific photos. And if you are able to, you pick one. That is hard. But at least you have your 4 to go with. But what this helps you do is understand what do you tend to be drawn to? And then you're able to just kind of put it on paper. And when you go shopping or when you're making your plan for your project, you're able to really narrow that down, which is so helpful for many people. And it's definitely helpful for me when I am working on a project with a client. Like, this is the process I have to go down to like narrow down to find our roadmap. Because if we have too many options, nothing gets done. Okay, that is the end of our first section. Are there any questions about what we've talked about there? I am trying to access chats. Is there anything anybody has said about that? Doesn't seem so, but it looks like we are. I don't know if anybody can hear that, but my dog keeps going in and out of the dog door also. So just always something to add here. Okay, well, let's get to the next section, which is visual stimulation and overwhelm. I will say this, we've talked about being hypersensitive versus hyposensitive. So that sensory seeking versus kind of wanting to get away from something that's too sensory activating across the board. This one, everyone tends to be negatively impacted by, which is that the clutter. And y'all, I mean, we're gonna get to some very personal photos in here of my closet shortly. So I'm in the boat too. But here's some ways that I've managed things. And one is becoming very, becoming very, piles are my friends. I made friends with them. I'm like, okay, this is how we have to work through this. The piles are pitch, that goes in the trash. Pass, we're going to donate that. Price, we're going to resell it. And place, and that's what we keep. And so between these piles, that's how I can stay on top of my clutter. Because those of us who do find comfort in items that hold sentimental value, those things can quickly become overwhelming if we don't learn some boundaries around what to keep or keep displayed, and that kind of thing. So when I work through my piles, a couple of my strategies are, well, one thing is when I go on trips and I want to bring something back, I tend to go toward decorative items, or useful items. Is it a coffee mug I can use every day? Is it books about local culture or the food or architecture? Christmas ornaments, that's one that I really enjoy. So kind of bringing in new nostalgic things, I try to make sure they're useful or decorative. And one way that I keep clutter at bay is I have a few, I call them nostalgia bins. It's basically, I finally, a couple years back, went to the Container Store and got them all the same size, and like that way they can stack easier, because I did have a mismatch set, because I've been I've been keeping this like up since I was in junior high. A little pack rat. Yeah, like a little pack rat. So I have a set of these bins that are stacked in an upstairs closet, and the top one always has the lid off. Because what I'm able to then do is instead of, like a menu from a special night out, or concert ticket stubs, or Christmas cards, instead of them like getting stashed in my drawer because I'm like, drawer downstairs because I'm like, oh, I need to run these up and, get in the storage unit, or I don't know, something. And then they get stuck in a junk drawer. I'm able to just go run them upstairs next time I go upstairs, open the closet door, and just throw them in top of that bin. And I don't have to worry about it anymore. So that's one little way that I've found is helpful for me. Also, if someone gifts me something, I've had to get really, really rigid with this one. But if someone gifts me something and I haven't used it in over a year, and I just know likely it's not going to happen, with a caveat, if I'm going to throw something away or, give something away and I'm just, what if I do need it? I do have like a middle ground. And I should have added it in my piece, but it's like just my little maybe box. And that one, if it goes in there and a year later I haven't missed it or I haven't used it, it goes to the next place. But yeah, with gratitude in my heart for who gave it to me, and that was so kind, and the thought was wonderful, and I love that. On its way it goes to the next place, to someone that can use it. So those are some boundaries that I've set around helping prevent my place from getting even more visually overwhelming than a maximalist home is. Okay. And I have a quick question for you guys. Would y'all let me know in the comments real quick? Are you able to see the presentation in a large enough way to where y'all can read the words? Because on my screen, it's very tiny. And I just want to make sure it's not super tiny on y'all's screen. Can y'all just let me know if you can read the words on the presentation? Like the tinier words, If y'all can just let me know, that'd be cool. You can read it. Okay, perfect. Wonderful. You just never know what I'm seeing, if that's what y'all are seeing. It's so hard. Okay, so once you process those piles, now what? The biggest thing, and if y'all saw, I think I posted this reel yesterday or the day before. Oh, and yes, y'all are getting a recording, so I will actually upload this to YouTube, so you'll be able to go watch it at your convenience. A quick aside, this is the first workshop this is the first workshop topic I presented last fall, and that's the one that's on YouTube currently, but I've learned things and added things. It's not the same presentation at all. So this is going to be replacing that one, which I'm really excited about. So yes, you'll be able to go over there and get that. Okay, so the reel that I posted recently it was just showing my love for my storage furniture. It really has been so helpful for me to invest in pieces that are more storage oriented as opposed to more leggy. So, like leggy furniture that you can kind of see, it just has legs, and those are great. There's gorgeous pieces. But what I found is helpful for me in managing my clutter, especially as someone who lives in a smaller space. We live in I forget, but it's about 1,400 or so square feet, townhome. And so we don't have a lot of space, which is actually probably very good, because I would tend to accumulate a lot more than I do. But these consoles that I have, so you'll see the doors in that middle picture, and that's the one nearest to the lamp is my garage door. So that's where we're going in and out pretty frequently. And I keep all of my go items, purses, changes of purses, chapstick, that kind of thing, because I was noticing that every time I left would go to leave, maybe I needed to change a purse to match my outfit. I was wearing black and I needed brown. I don't know, something like that. Or I needed a hat and all the hats were up the stairs and on the other side of the house in my closet. So it's like, I mean, you're going up the stairs, through the loft, into my room, into the bathroom, into the closet. And I was just, things were then getting piled on the kitchen table because then when I would come home, I wouldn't go upstairs right away. And so they would just get dumped. And what I realized is I needed to cut down on that friction. It made more sense to store those items downstairs by the back door than it did in my closet. And so that's one thing that I really stress. And I am by no means an organizer. I have taken classes in this concept. I have hired and worked with organizers, both personally and for clients. So I've learned some things, but the friction, when you can identify that can really help you get a handle on setting a good foundation for having a sensory friendly home. And I've known that for years. I didn't know what words to put to it, but I had suspected that interior design massively underutilizes professional organizers, because I can make a room look beautiful and moderately intuitively. I was also solving for, clutter and organization issues. But in general, as interior designers, when you go into a home and you can make it look beautiful all you want, but if it's not functional for how the family is actually living, it's not going to stay. It's not going to stay pretty because it's going to get cluttered, or yeah. So anyway, if anyone here is an interior designer, I highly recommend you create relationships and bring in organizers to help you, help your clients kind of get on top of that as well. So it's my little soapbox on that. If you do have any questions about organization, I really recommend the Institute for Challenging Disorganization. That's where I've gotten my training from. And they have a lot of good resources. This fact sheet, for instance, it kind of walks you through the common characteristics of individuals affected by chronic disorganization. And frequently, neurodiversity or neurodivergence and chronic disorganization go hand in hand. It's just a byproduct of kind of all that's going on in our heads and our executive function issues and all of that. So I really believe that those of us who have this, especially depending on your life stage, like when I had young kids at home, I was so taxed and, kind of pushed to my limit that taking care of my clutter was so overstimulating. And so, I don't know, for like Mother's Day, for a birthday, I mean, it is not a sexy thing to ask for, but like consider asking for, hey, I want to hire an organizer to come through. And I will say they need to be a ADHD literate, a neurodivergence literate organizer. The really cool thing is about the Institute for Challenging Disorganization, they have a vendor list. And there's several here in town that I'm friends with, and they're incredible humans. They're able to come in and help us work through our clutter. So I really recommend doing that for yourself. Now, if that's not really an option, having a friend who is not a professional, but that also isn't as attached to your things as you are, who can ask those questions of, do you think you'll use this in a year? Maybe. Okay. When was the last time you did use this thing? They can ask those hard questions, and you'll be more apt to maybe answer honestly to them than you would yourself. So bringing in even just a friend to help you work through your piles is just really, really helpful. Okay, I think I've covered everything in this one, but yeah, we are going on to our next our next spot. So this one's a little more fun. We're getting into acoustics and sound management, which there's some ways here. A couple of these sections have ways that you can really uh, make changes like pretty immediate and with not a lot of an investment. So that's really great. And okay, so we're going to start over here, acoustics and sound management. So we're going to start with absorption. You'll see Patrick Dempsey here. He's not just here, to make us all smile, but he does have something to add. This was one of my favorite AD home tours. It was of Patrick Dempsey's home, and his home was one of my favorites. But it's an old artist's loft, and it had a lot of like open spaces. And one thing that his family, would have to do is have a lot of sound dampening and absorption solutions because, some of a lot of the walls didn't go all the way to the ceiling. And anyway, super cool house. Highly recommend a YouTube jaunt to go over and take a look at it. But adding soft surfaces is going to do a great job at absorbing sound. So that's rugs, curtains, upholstered furniture, adding bookshelves, even just because of the absorption quality that those will offer the room, work against any hard surfaces that you have in there, which do tend to echo and amplify noise. Cleanability can be a concern. Using wool rugs when possible due to like inherent stain resistance and durability, definitely on stairs, is what I like to kind of promote. But definitely, again, depending on life stage, sometimes it's easier to think, oh, I can throw this ruggable rug or ruggable knockoff rug in the washing machine when the dog, we have a puppy or we have a senior dog or we have toddlers and we have more on the way. Like sometimes these life stages, it makes us value some things more than we may value others later in life. So some people would say, I like wool because of it's just natural. Other people would say, they don't want to use ruggable because the materials are not natural, they're synthetic, and do they have plastics in them and all of that. All of those are completely valid. You just have to kind of figure out what you value at this moment. And I'll be honest, when you've got a house full of kids and pets and all of that, there is no wrong answer. You just have to kind of figure out what works best for you. Okay, that's me giving you permission to do ruggable if that's what you want. And okay, so we've got in picture 4, we have acoustic tiles that Felt Right Acoustic Tiles is one of my favorite brands. They have some really artistic and creative ways to help dampen sound in a very like artful way. So acoustic tiles are not just for, large classrooms anymore. They're kind of fun and made for the house. One of my other favorites, they have some wood paneled or wood layered acoustic tiles that I really like. Okay, I think I jumped right through pictures 1 and 3. But anyway, 3, you'll see that's actually my dining room. And I have a vintage Japanese, it's Asian silk screen that's there that I love, but it provides, that's one creative way to bring in acoustic absorption. And then in picture 5, we've got really heavy drapes and we have a very tall headboard. That's going to help in bedrooms to absorb sound too, or any room really with the drapes. But okay. So another solution for acoustics and sound management is diffusion. So it's a strategic placement of furniture, room dividers, walls, and bookcases that break up those sound waves and soften noise distribution. So one thing I thought of when I was putting this slide together was I knew in the pandemic days when we would go into restaurants, I guess as we were kind of like nearing the end of it, and we'd go into restaurants and we would have the partitions up. I knew I was going to miss those because even though it may not have dampened sound a ton. It just provided like a cozy little like boundary of space that I really, really enjoyed. But it did help with the noise too. Anyway, when I was working on this, I was like, oh gosh, I do miss those. I'd forgotten to think about them. But in photo 1, you'll see you've got a kind of little folding screen. You'll see just a large canvas of artwork above the fireplace, and then a rug on the floor. I swear, rugs, carpets do wonders for sound. And then in photo 2, you see a little room divider with it looks like maybe a built-in bookcase or it's just kind of fitted. And then number 3, one thing that I really love about older homes is there are some good things about open floor plans for sure, but I do miss just the kind of more closed off and cozy spaces that we used to have when homes were less open floor plan. And I think one of those things too is obviously with the acoustics, it helps with that, but you have more wall space to put beautiful things. And give me wall space or space to put a piece of furniture and a surface and I will cover it with stuff. Okay, and then another strategy, and our second to the last one that we're going to talk about here is controlled background sound. So sound machines are a simple and budget-friendly way to reduce noise. It's going to promote better sleep and focus, and they really do complement other strategies. You can use them as standalone, or they complement other strategies like panels or furniture placement. And nature sounds, oddly, they have been noted to have a specific positive impact on our nervous system. Certain rhythms and white noise can improve focus by covering distracting or irritating sounds, as I'm sure we all are aware of. But there's some interesting studies on that in those links. And then lastly, isolation. So really, especially if you are building or remodeling, you can kind of do this a little bit easier. But things to keep in mind are room placement. So those zones that are both for minimizing sensory overload and allowing for sensory input. So maybe you want to cook with loud music, you're wrestling or roughhousing in the living room or the playroom. Having zones for both things is helpful for the whole family. And even if you just live by yourself, it's just, it's helpful for you to have that retreat space, or I guess it'd be with one other person really, because you're the one making noise. If you're living by yourself, you're doing all the things you want to do when you're in the mood to do it. But say you're living, with a partner or roommate, having those spaces, even if it's just 2 of you in the house, are huge. And just keeping those louder spaces like kitchens and play areas away from bedrooms and offices if possible. And if it's not, investing in some soundproofing solutions like solid core doors. They're heavier and they block noise better than hollow doors. Also, acoustic door sweeps, especially if you have hardwood or tile floors. Those acoustic door sweeps can help seal the gaps under doors and make the sound travel just a little bit less. You can also get specialized insulation that's and thicker drywall, depending on how deep you're wanting to go and you're not remodeling. Those are some things that you can do as well that, are frequently done in, say, apartments or something like that. Another thing is just getting creative with room functions. So just like I got creative with the way that, 15% of my closet isn't in my closet anymore. It's downstairs. Get creative with your room purposes if needed. For example, I've had clients with open floor plans. They moved their dining table into the living room, and then they used the living room as their dining room because they wanted more separation for the living room and that kind of quieter space. And they moved that to what was intended to be the dining room. So just kind of don't hesitate to think outside the box with some of this, for sure. And then again, with a little bit of isolation. So prioritizing a quiet room, corner, something for those sensory breaks. It could look like just a sofa or chair in your bedroom or office. And you just add some, cozy layers and a sound machine, and you're kind of set. And maybe a lock on the door, depending on what you need. And if claiming that shared or claiming a sensory space in a shared room can be tricky. I grew up in a large family, so I totally know this. So sometimes sensory time is the alternative you have to do to sensory space. So growing up in that large family, it was just like chaos from like 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. every day. And I found what I know now to be my sensory time. I would look forward to this so much. I would treat myself to late night audiobook time, where I popped a bowl of popcorn. I poured my favorite cherry soda. For those of y'all from Texas, it was HEB used to have this cherry soda. HEB is a grocery store in Texas. And oh my gosh, I would have that, my headphones. I'd go sit just on the couch. Everybody was in bed, and I would listen to my favorite, audiobook. And knowing what I know now, I was just kind of claiming that sensory time just for me that I just didn't have during the day. So those are options. Next up, we've got textures and tactile comfort. Actually, before I go into there, is there anything that we've got on the other? And hold on, I think my messages. Oh, and Katie says that CAS with Clutterbug is super helpful for organization. Yeah, totally. In fact, Katie, if you want to add that into the chat with everybody, totally do that. Real quick, I do need to figure out how to get back over to the big chat. This one threw me into private. Okay. If anybody is somewhat more familiar with Zoom and can message me and help me. Oh, main chat. I see a button now. Okay. Yay. Okay. Sorry. Does anybody have any comments on the last section we went through? Okay. Go ahead and drop those in the comment box. If you do, we're going to keep going. So obviously, people have varying tactile preferences, and offering and limiting textures significantly influences that comfort and stress level. So calming, sensory-friendly items, anything soft can really provide that tactile experience. But just remember, softness is so highly subjective. We have 3 neurodiverse people in our immediate family and 3 opinions on what soft is. So avoiding the scratchy or irritating materials really is helpful for preventing overstimulation there. And then those activating sensory-friendly items here would be, weighted blankets and lap pads. They provide that deep pressure stimulation. And if weighted blankets can feel too big or suffocating, you can also look into like a weighted heating pad or something like that. And then again, the use of textured furniture, wall panels, soft furniture covers, those all give you a varied sensory experience. So one of the things, if you're a type of person who loves a little bit of that activating sensory experience, pictures, and I guess because they're bigger, I went to them first, but they're actually the last numerically, but we're just going to go with it. Picture 7 is one of my absolute favorite textures. It's just like raw travertine, and or at least this is a travertine look. It could be, cast and colored concrete. But remember that that visual texture is the way that as adults, those of us who really still like that sensory input, that's typically what we need in our decor. So, picture 6 or image 6, a little ottoman. It's got little playful strings of yarn on this particular upholstery, and then the undulating wood base just kind of provides some fun visual interest. And then love it or hate it, boucle is similar to like, the inside of a pair of Uggs, just anything that's just super tactile and either visually tactile or actually physically tactile can be so activating and fun. And then you've got pictures 1 through 4, and those are going to be, more on the silky, soft, velvety side of things. Yeah, so again, just kind of providing an array of all of that, if you can, is helpful, because when you're in the mood to sit on something soft, you have it. When you are in the mood to, sit on something hard or fuzzy or whatever, you have that too. And even if it's just bringing that fuzzy in, with the blanket on the same sofa, there's ways to kind of weave all of this in. So here's an example of, going back real quick to GA Architects of London, the research and client data really showed high preference around soft and plain furnishings. So if you're in that camp, that first picture is an example of what that could be. Then you go over to the picture on the right, which is very varied and layered. And that's by an interior designer on Instagram. Or her Instagram is Laura W. Jenkins Interiors, and she's fantastic. But this is one of my favorite rooms of hers. Basically, though, regardless of where you fall on the sensory spectrum, don't do this. Hard and cold surfaces everywhere, harsh lighting, hard seating, no rugs, like all of these things could be fine if integrated in different ways, but just no. No. Okay, this is a quick deep dive. When you guys get the presentation, you can look into it, but it kind of gives you an understanding of lighting types. And designers recommend that you have about 9 different points of light in the average room. And essentially it's, you have your overhead lights, your task lights that you need. And then you have your indirect lighting, which, can be found in a couple of different placement. And then you have your diffused lighting. And so that's a different layer. So all these layers together can kind of give you whatever lighting you need in the moment for a task or a mood, which is very helpful. Real quick, one thing I do want to say is lighting is also one of the easiest and least expensive and most impactful things you can make. So sound and light, I would say, are top 2, at least in our home, and what I've seen with clients. And so I'm going to talk about how to do this. It's a little involved, but if you hang in there with me, you'll know what box of light bulbs to grab next time you're in Home Depot. Okay, so real quick though, this is about table lamps, and I have this info. I have a it's Concept to Completion. It's the living room guide, and it starts at the very beginning, like, oh, so you think you want to redo your living room, all the way through to styling the actual project you pulled together. One section in it is the space planning, and I would say by far space planning is one of the most underestimated pieces of a project. It's kind of how all the furniture fits and works together so that you don't end up with a side table that's 12 inches lower than your couch arm, that kind of stuff. Right here, what I'm wanting to show is when you have a table lamp, make sure that the bottom of the lampshade sits below the eye line of whoever's sitting next to it. I've been in places where I sat down and there was this beautiful lamp, but it was on like a console table behind the sofa. And the entire time, it was like an interrogation light bulb, just kind of like beaming right in my eye. So whether it's your nightstand or your living room, make sure that your lampshades kind of help prevent glare from coming at you. Okay, this is a fun little group exercise. Okay, so with your hand, kind of cover, if you can, just kind of like either your eye or however big your screen is, cover the right side of the photo and just kind of look at that warm light. Notice how you feel, and then move your hand over to cover the left side. And just kind of notice what you feel. I would love any, this is fun when I do it in a live workshop. I was at a tile showroom presenting to a bunch of designers recently, and it was fun to get the feedback in person. But if y'all had any thoughts or feedback when you did that group exercise, you can just drop them in the comments. But so this photo is from a recent project, and it shows a difference in a typical daylight bulb, which is about 5,000 kelvins, which looks blue. It's used in hospitals, it's used in warehouses, because you really want that daylight light, right? So that's what's on the right side of the sideboard versus the soft white bulb, that 2,700 to 3,000 Kelvin on the left side. I came into this home and I was having a conversation because we had different temperatures and different spots that were all visible. So on the right side, you saw like it's like a formal living space directly where I'm standing in the photo was the dining room, and then you have the kitchen, and then you had the family room. So you had kind of this horseshoe shape, and I could see all these spaces, and they all had different temperature light bulbs. Okay, so that alone can be overstimulating. But secondly, when you have daylight bulbs, it can be overstimulating. So I asked her, I said, okay, so talk to me about this. We obviously need to pick one. What are your thoughts there? And she was like, well, we had the warmer light in here in the dining room, but we couldn't see anything. We needed it to be brighter. And so we went with the daylight bulb. And I said, okay, so, and I'm about to take y'all down this little path. But I said, so it's interesting. The color, you may think there's a bit of a difference with the color, but it's actually, you're looking for lumens. Lumens is the brightness output of a bulb. And all of this information is on a little label on the bulb boxes. It looks like a nutrition label. We're about to go take a look, but I'm going to help you all understand a little bit about lighting, that most designers will do a max of 3,000 kelvins on that color spectrum, max about 3,000. So we're about to go look at that. But yeah, there was a group exercise, and we've got, so yeah, basically this, we're wanting warm, not this. Okay, so that 2,000 to 3,000, when you're getting real far into the 2,000s, that's like those Edison lights. It can get real orange. You're wanting to stay in kind of the soft white to bright white range, 2,700 to 3,000 K. So where you'll find that on the box is this little nutrition label looking thing, and it's on every single light bulb box, whatever store. And you see down here, it says light appearance, and it's a little scale. And so we're over here on the warm side at 2,700 K. So number one, outside of maybe your bathroom, depending on what you need for kind of skincare, makeup application, that kind of thing, which you can go you can go higher on the kelvins there. I would still stick around 3,000 because it's just going to be fairly neutral. You're going to want to kind of pick a Kelvin for the house. One thing too, I think I have it in here. Yeah, anything over 4,000, which is definitely in that daylight range, so that cool white to daylight, can reduce melatonin production. So whatever you put in the bathroom, you put in the bathroom. But any place that you are hanging out in the evenings, and especially your nightstand lamps, make those as warm as you're comfortable with, just to kind of help prevent issues with melatonin production on set. Okay, and then so we've got the temperature of your light, and then this gets into what the client was concerned with, which was the brightness. So it's actually lumens, and we were probably all taught, no, I was, that it was watts, but watts is energy usage, so we don't care about that. I mean, we do care about that, but not for brightness. So brightness is also on this nutrition label looking thing. It's in this first line right here. And this particular bulb would give us 820 lumens. Okay. You can take like a little screenshot of this. When you get the PDF, you can, whatever you want to do with it, and throw it in a folder to help you next time you're shopping for light bulbs. But this is a chart that I made that gives the area, and then how many ambient lumens per square foot do we usually kind of want, and then how many task lumens kind of per area. So if we're talking like in bathrooms, you want like 400 total lumens minimum at a task area, like the sink and closet. When you're picking out clothes and when you're doing your skincare, you want to make sure and have around 400 total lumens at those task areas. Per square foot, it's about 70 to 80 lumens a square foot. So I just picked bathrooms randomly. I have it listed out for all these areas. You can get real, in that rabbit hole. But your brain may be exploding now, so we are pivoting over here to space planning. I know that was probably a lot. Let me know, drop in the comments if you have any thoughts or questions about lighting. Okay, so this gets into some of the space planning section, again, from that living room guide. And again, on my website for free is a size and scale guide for living rooms. So you can download just that section on my website also. And I'll follow this up with an email that will have all the links in it too. Okay, so keeping things as clutter-free as possible for, keeping things sensory friendly, using built-in or storage furniture to keep things out of sight. Maintaining wide open walkways. So for primary walkways, that's between 30 and 48 inches. And avoiding placing too much furniture in a room, which can feel visually and spatially overwhelming. Again, you see the room behind me. Like, some of us who live in smaller spaces, who are also maximalists, we deal with, a little more clutter maybe than we should, because we just love the layers. But just in general, maintaining those wide walkways and using storage furniture is helpful. So we've got that. And then another thing to consider when you're doing this, especially if you're kind of wanting to repurpose some rooms, is understanding your seating strategy. So I have some info here, like common layouts for furniture and why they work. So depending on what you're going to use your room for, like, is it going to be for watching TV? Is it going to be primarily for conversation and reading? Is it going to be like a second office? Is it going to be a blend? I will say the layouts and the use of swivel chairs are both very helpful when you're needing to kind of combine spaces. So L-shaped layouts typically work well when you need to tuck an arrangement in a corner. It's kind of a smaller room, and it can easily be a blend of conversation and TV focused, especially if you use swivel chairs. You can either swivel toward the sofa where the other people are, or swivel away and watch TV. So L-shape works. U-shape layouts they're so satisfyingly symmetrical, and your focal point can be kind of in front of the sofa usually. And again, if the swivels are on either side of the sofa, just, they can pivot toward the sofa or toward the TV easily. And then an I-shape layout also channels symmetry, and it's frequently used in more just like reading or conversation focused settings. Another one there that's a favorite of mine is a coffee table with like 4 armchairs around it. I just love the coziness and intimacy of that one. So anyway, you guys can kind of deep dive into that once you get the this. And then we're going to go real quick into the scent and olfactory considerations, especially on the construction and decor side of things. So for those of us who are sensitive, I remember being this sensitive as a kid, and it was so frustrating. Bath and Body Works was all the rage. I wanted to smell like country apple more than anything, but that would give me a headache so fast. I pushed through. I persevered, as teenagers will do, to be cool and, use the end things. But now I know totally what my body was trying to tell me. It was like, don't put that stuff on me. So especially when we're thinking of our decor and when we're moving into construction projects, being mindful to use low VOC wherever we can. So that's flooring adhesives, float and glue, furniture foam, paint, sealants, fabric. And visually high quality faux plants can also smell. I had an experience with that through it. I did everything. I did straight vinegar. I did Febreze even. I took it outside and let it air. Nothing would work. I finally just had to send it back. So yeah, I have so many little things that have happened. But one particular ventilation strategy is when you are introducing new furniture or during renovations, just open windows, use fans, air purifiers, which we'll get into real quick next, can significantly help speed up that off-gassing process that happens with some of the newer things. So timing and planning, factor in an off-gassing period in your project timeline if possible. 1 to 2 weeks will give significant furniture or flooring installation help, and ensure clients, and this is one I was this is a presentation I was giving specifically toward interior designers, but ensuring clients aren't rushed to occupy the space immediately if there are some severe sensitivities. So, maybe that means they have to, stay in their alternative location for another week or two, but just being upfront about that during the prep process. So they're expecting that. And what's interesting, there's a source on this too down here, but according to the EPA, indoor air pollutants can be 2 to 5 times higher than outdoors. And it all goes back to VOC emissions from the furniture that we have, the adhesives and the textile. So choosing low emission materials really just supports our health, and it improves cognitive function and reduces symptoms. But it really is, it's more than you might think inside. And scent and olfactory conditions, again, in construction and decor is fabrics. So anytime you can, buying fabrics like organic cotton, linen, hemp, wool, they naturally have lower chemical residues compared to synthetics. And when you do purchase, if you can request that no extra stain or fabric or flame retardants are added by the manufacturers or shippers or suppliers. I'm actually going through a training right now with ID Green List. She's a fantastic resource to know about if you're in the industry or not in the industry. I mean, just incredible resources. And this is kind of my next frontier, is learning to really up my game around trade resources, and even not trade resources, just like retail resources. Pottery Barn has their organic sheet line. So, some of these things are fairly accessible. And then wool in particular is particularly beneficial, especially as mattresses, because it's naturally flame resistant, so it doesn't require those chemical treatments. So when you're looking at alternative mattresses, definitely consider one that's made with wool. And my personal favorite, because it also includes a treasure hunt, which my ADHD loves, but is purchasing consignment or used. It is such a sustainable option, and the furniture's had a chance to off-gas the bulk of its chemicals already. So that kind of hits a couple of different things that are important to me. And when possible, opt for furniture with removable and washable slipcovers made of natural fabrics. And that's just going to help you keep things clean and help with the allergens and stuff like that. And sometimes, especially if you're doing something like a large purchase, requesting material samples before committing to a large furniture purchase, you can place those materials in like a little Ziploc bag overnight. And this can go for not just upholstery, but it can go for wood, because it'll have the stain on it. And so if the container smells too strongly when opened the next day, maybe reconsider the purchase. It really just depends on how sensitive you are. And then for the sensitive clients, sourcing from suppliers known for their transparency and their manufacturing process can really just save hassle and discomfort down the road. And then the Environmental Working Group Healthy Home Guide is something that I recommend just kind of looking into. I know we can all go down rabbit holes and we can't obviously stay, protected from everything, but I use it. I use the EWG for skincare and makeup before I even knew they had a home guide. So they have some interesting resources. Okay, and then just day-to-day scent and olfactory considerations. Using unscented or naturally scented fragrances can help prevent that sensory overload. And just typically natural scents or, more natural scents are typically tolerated better. So if scent is desired, which I love smells, so I couldn't just go fragrance free. I've had to find, essential oils that I like, and I have an essential oil diffuser. I can do a simmer pot, typically around the holidays is when those pop up, or the fall. And some candles I can tolerate. Most, a lot of them give me headaches, but I have found some, and I can usually tell, like if I go into a store and I smell them, and it isn't always by brand either. Like some scents I can tolerate within a brand and others I can't. So you just kind of have to figure out what works for you. But also using real plants throughout the house. Like me, I have a blend because I have the worst green thumb ever. It's something I do want to work on, but I haven't quite found the time for that to do. My list is very long on all the things I want to do. So, but using real plants throughout the house can help purify the air too. And did I already say? Oh, and investing in air purifier that's got a HEPA filter. That's really been big for us. And they really do cover a large square footage, and the filters you don't have to replace too frequently. So we have the Blue Air upstairs and downstairs. And then using non-toxic and fragrance-free or naturally scented cleaning products. So Branch Basics, 7th generation, DIY mixtures, like honestly in my kitchen, and it smells bad when I'm using it. I have gotten used to it now, but I just use a vinegar solution. And by the time it dries, the smell dissipates, but you could add some essential oils to that if you wanted to make your own. But there are things out there that are non-toxic. Okay, so our next section and last section is kind of easy interiors, and just thinking of how to improve safety with furniture and how to improve our lives with some automation. And this is coming from a girl who gets overwhelmed with all the doodads and technology and stuff like that. But there are things that has definitely helped me remember things and just kind of keep things automated, which has helped. Okay, so clients who struggle with coordination, spatial awareness, or hyperactivity easily bump into sharp corners, knock over unstable furniture, and get hooked or poked by lever-style door handles. So these are just some things to remember. I personally, for the most part, have just learned to deal with my bumps and bruises. But I do wonder if I had it to do over again, if I would opt for a less lever-style door handle or not. And I've had to sand down the corners of my kitchen island because I was running into them. I'm glad I finally figured out what that bruise was from, because it was so weird for a while. Anyway, injuries can be especially common for sensory-seeking kids who use the house for parkour, as some of y'all may know. So opting for furniture with rounded edges, adding corner protections for sharp corners, selecting heavier, sturdier furniture to prevent tipping when they climb on top of it, and no glass. Anchoring large furniture pieces securely to the wall. Y'all, when I wrote this, I forgot what a sensory-seeking child I was, and I remembered me and my 2 younger sisters. This one time, an entire dresser fell on top of all three of us because we pulled out. One of us, probably me, was trying to find something on the top of the dresser. I don't know, maybe 6, which, made one sister 4 and the other sister 2. I really feel bad for the 2-year-old at the time because she was probably not tall enough. At least my head popped over the top of the dresser. But we pulled out the bottom, stood on the top, and by the time whichever last of us got their feet on top of the drawer, down it came. Anyway, so these things, they happen. And especially if you're an interior designer, keeping these things in mind for liability reasons. Like, you don't want your clients' children to get injured because they're being kids. So also reconsidering any glass furniture, especially tabletops. And then how to improve safety with technology. Forgetfulness and distraction, which are common in ADHD, can mean doors get left unlocked, keys frequently misplaced. So smart locks can remove some of that stress by allowing keyless entry and automatic locking from your phone. Installing automatic shut-off plugs can be scheduled. That's another thing. Using visual cues for critical tasks like medication, appliances, locking doors, and then considering smart options for things like turning on appliances like, the Nest thermostat system that you can control from your phone, that kind of thing. These are things that are helpful when you're sitting on the runway on a runway in an airplane and you're like, did I do the XYZ thing? You'll thank yourself. Okay, and then lastly, some smart lighting systems can support better sleep habits and happier moods. Smart thermostats, again, helpful when you're away from home and you wonder if you turn that down or off or whatnot. Robot vacuums, they can really help save time and energy and cut down on allergens and just kind of motivate everybody to pick their things up so that the little robot friend can get through. Paper and digital schedules. In fact, I will be sending this information out if it works. My favorite schedule, I'm just going to give a plug right quick to this one that I've used for years. It's the Day Designer. And this one's a big one. I've used several of their sizes, but this Day Designer, it's the brand, has worked very well for my brain. But I am now trying a new one after my 8-year love affair with Day Designer, because this one was made by a woman with ADHD. And so it's over on my kitchen table, of course, but I will report back and see if that one is even better than Day Designer. And there's a specific Day Designer one that I love. So I'm going to include the link to it in the follow-up email. I'm writing that down right now, and I will also include it, if you're watching this on YouTube, I will include it in the description below. Day Designer link. Okay. But yeah, paper and digital schedules, and then reminders and alerts. So I don't know how many times I've said, hey, SIRI. I've said it before and she's gone off. Set an alarm for 10 minutes. And whether that's because I put something in the oven or I need to remember I need to go or, whatever it is, those have just been so helpful for me. Okay, guys, we're going to get to just a few resources that I've got for y'all, and then we can either open it up we'll open it up for Q&A, and I'll look at some of the comments that have come through, and then y'all can get back to your day. But here's something that you'll receive, and it's just a potential sensory intake questionnaire. So these are things that just kind of help you think through if you're having trouble, like me sometimes, pinpointing what it is that I need or want or prefer. Because sometimes I'm just going and blowing and I don't think it through, and it would be helpful if I did. So I've got some questions for you there. And then I also have some wonderful resources, organizations like Autism Speaks, CHAD, the Institute for Challenging Disorganization, the Star Institute for Sensory Processing, and then some of my favorite books that you may enjoy also. Okay, what's going to end up in your inbox? And make sure, I know you don't have to drop your email address in the chat. I have it because you signed up through Eventbrite. So I will send you the sensory-friendly cheat sheet for attending today. So thank you guys so much. This will just give you kind of a just a little visual, a little blueprint for each of the sections that we talked about today. And for those of you, for interior designers who are getting this for IDCEC credit, go ahead and you can either scan this QR code or you may need to email me. But yeah, so that I can get you a certificate of completion. And then, okay, so here's some links that you'll end up with. You can either set up a 15-minute call with me anytime. I just have that on like kind of an auto thing, so you can just book it and we can chat. I also offer sensory-friendly home assessments, where this one's kind of a more intense option. I have in between those two things, I have like a 60-minute call if you really want to kind of work through some things at your house. But the sensory friendly home assessment, it's about 3 hours of design time. 2 hours of it is me and you going through your home, your challenges, all these things, and making adjustment recommendations for the spaces. And then the remaining third hour is yours to use as you start making those adjustments. And you're like, hey, Rachel, what do we need to do here? Hey, I think this needs to be tweaked. So those are so fun. I love doing home assessments with people. Just the almost instant gratification of what you see the differences you can make is just fantastic. Okay, well, thank you everyone so much. I am going to pop into the chat to see if we have any questions, that kind of thing. And let's see. It's so good to have all of you guys here. So yes, y'all will get a recording, and yes, other audio processing disorder people there. Yay, that's me. I'm the one who has that in the family. So all the things. And then yes, I agree, Sophie. When we were looking at the lighting, that right side was just kind of that colder. You get that colder feeling for sure. Okay, and I haven't done the deep dive into smart lights, you guys, but I know people who have, and they swear by them. Everybody does. So it's on my list. It's on my list of things to try. But I've heard rave reviews. So definitely think there's something to be done there. And then thank you, Sarah. Appreciate your kind words. I appreciate all of you guys being here. Okay, so and Katie says that she did find where she could control the Kelvin. Okay, cool. On like the smart lights, I'm assuming. Yeah, that's super helpful. All right, if any of y'all have follow-up questions, just shoot me an email. My phone number is in my email signature. But if you haven't gotten an email directly from me, I think you'll have gotten them from Eventbrite. If you haven't gotten them directly from me yet, you will shortly when I send you the presentation and the list or all these little links. But just text me. My phone number's in the signature. So yeah. All right. Well, you guys all enjoy the rest of your day. And thank you so much for joining. Appreciate it.
Recording stopped.